Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, guten Tag. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here to our plenary session on creating livable cities in a changing urban landscape.
New York did something in 1811 that was truly remarkable and is, I think, a model for how we could think about the approach that other cities could follow. They made a plan for taking most of the island of Manhattan, which was then not developed, was just farmland with a few towns, a plan for laying out a street grid. They had a sense that if there was this generous allocation of public space, however we would use it, 200 years later, we'd be better off than if we started without it. We have to set these kinds of frameworks to have the freedom and the opportunity that cities can allow, and there is no option to delay. If we delay, a default framework, like the framework for public space that will emerge in a favela, will become the de facto framework. The framework here is not just the physical framework of the streets, but the notions of entitlement and right that people have built up. And it is very difficult to change those perceptions once they're deeply entrenched. So if we could rerun history, we might imagine trying to set aside that generous public space in Manhattan, but perhaps from the very beginning do something like charge anyone who has a car a permit, make them buy a permit that they have to acquire before they can drive their car on the streets of Manhattan. Now, the cost of that permit might be very low in the early years. There might not be much demand for it. It could be close to zero. But it could change the perceptions about right and public versus private opportunities. There could be a recognition that this is something which is valuable and you have to pay to use it.
Now, I know that the Urbanization Project's latest initiative is to look at creating new cities because, quote, they offer uniquely important opportunities to implement reform and speed progress. Now, I have to say, when I think about creating new cities, I think about the New Towns movement, and I wonder, isn't it always a temptation for planners to say, oh, let's forget the old, let's just start and build it right from the ground up?
When people in India ask me, well, what shall we do to fix Mumbai? My answer to them is, you should just put Mumbai on hold for 2 or 3 decades and think about creating space like the space in Manhattan, where millions of people can move into cities in India who can't move into Mumbai right now, and do that over and over again all over India so that there is this new space to move into. Eventually, you could come back and think about trying to do something in Mumbai, and if there isn't quite so much pressure to move there, then it'll be easier to fix.
It would be easier if we could start all fresh, lay out the plans, knowing the modern means of transportation, how high we can build the buildings and things like that. And we do have eager goals on having more people move about by walking or riding the bicycles. But it's a challenge.
Our overarching objective is to develop an integrated transport system. We talk to our citizens about a culture of mobility. We want to have less cars on our roads in the future.
Our plans have always had more road user charging in them. The question with that is not whether it's technically feasible, but whether it's politically feasible. We have a scheme that was found to be politically feasible 10 years ago, which works very successfully. But whether you can impose that in outer London is different. But you have to offer people choices, I think.
You had enormous public support for your congestion charge. How?
Our congestion charge was born by a public referendum that was after the city election in 2011, where most of the people said yes to 5 referendums on mobility, on sustainable mobility, and on environment.
I was at the ITF forum for the first time a couple of years ago, and I would just applaud the whole refocusing on cities and on the environment and on the social impact of transport and mobility.
We're going to create groups with participation of the community. And our idea is to get agreements about which measures we should take in every different city in our country. So we're going to receive these ideas, we're going to work that ideas, and to create this framework, this common ground, and we're going to develop these measures. And the benefit of this is that people are going to have agreements before of the implementation of the measures of anti-congestion. But at the same time, we are going to get information from these communities about best solutions, because we can't know every single thing that is happening in all the cities or in the whole planet.
So I will just say a very, very warm thanks to everybody on the panel for your very thought-provoking and interesting contributions. Many thanks